Companies that were dependent on the Kaseya IT management software suffered a supply chain attack last weekend that may have resulted in people using this system automatically executing ransomware. So while everybody was grilling, setting off some fireworks, and celebrating Independence Day, hackers were able to compromise thousands of systems all over the globe. Now again, this is a supply chain attack, so it's really the people that are downstream, the people that are using the software that are really suffering. And right now, researchers believe that more than 1,000 companies are affected by this out of the 40,000 or so companies that are known to use Kaseya software. Now, an attack on an IT management software like this, it really does have the ability to spread far and wide, because these days, most small to medium-sized companies, they don't even really have a fully staffed IT department. They might have like one or two guys that know a little bit, like maybe they have an A+ certification and they're the ones that will actually set up the computers for new employees, or maybe they'll troubleshoot some very basic tasks. But these days, most companies that are that size are instead relying on management service providers. So essentially, they're using contractors for the IT role. But that contractor, that is having the IT systems outsourced to them, is obviously a pretty big target. I mean, just think about it. Instead of compromising one IT system to take down one company, or maybe not even the entire company, maybe you just get one branch, like one location where their offices are. Instead of doing that, you could just compromise every company in the world that is using this particular IT system, or at least most of them in this case. Such is the way of the supply chain attack. Now, luckily, the scope of this attack, it's mostly limited to the Kaseya VSA Unified Remote Management Platform. So we can see some of the features that this tool has. Monitor and manage everything. All of your traditional endpoints, whether it's servers, desktops, or laptops, SNMP network devices, and printers, get visibility of your entire IT environment with a VSA network topology map. Very convenient, but if hackers compromise your system, they also get visibility of your entire network. There's also some automation that we get with this, so it boosts your IT efficiency through automation and seamless workflows, remotely manage endpoints to proactively resolve issues, automate IT processes, and auto-remediate IT incidents. Or you can automatically create IT incidents if you're able to successfully compromise the software. Not only that, but you can probably wipe logs so that the IT people that are supposed to get notified about these incidents don't. So now you can seamlessly and automatically hack companies all over the world. Here's one example of a company that was compromised by it. So the Swedish Supermarket chain. Apparently, all of them were highly dependent on this software, and many had to shut down their operations for several days. A few of them were able to open back up, but they couldn't actually use the cash registers to process credit cards. I'm not sure whether they were able to use cash or not. What I was reading from different news articles is that people basically had to pay with their phone, I guess use like Samsung Pay or Apple Pay. That's how they were able to sort of still conduct operations and get around that. But imagine all the poor little old ladies, right? They're probably not using Apple Pay or Samsung Pay. So how are they able to get their cat food or their yogurt or whatever it is that old ladies buy? Now, one interesting thing about this attack is that samples of the malware are actually available to be looked at. I don't know if we have the actual source code to the malware. I'm not sure if that's been made public, but I do have these two binaries here. And let me just go ahead and transform this to a hexadecimal view so that it looks a little bit less crazy. Okay, there we go. That should look better. So these two malware samples, they are pretty much the same. Like we can, just take a look at the hex, right? There's not a whole lot of differences between the two, except if we go to the bottom of this A471. So if we go starting here, you can see that there's a whole bunch of zeros basically. So this is just padding that's added to the file Typically, the reason why somebody might do this is to just try and make the executable larger in size to bypass antivirus systems, or to just make it look more legit. Like there's kind of the old meme of downloading, like, what is it, some Linkin Park song off of Kaseya, but it's got a .exe extension and it's only like 300 KB in size. So yeah, that's the whole reason for adding the padding to it. Another interesting thing about this malware is really kind of how it worked. So it would get sideloaded by a legitimate copy of Microsoft Defender antivirus. Now, granted, it did have to be an older version of MS Defender, or at least it had to be some version of MS Defender that is vulnerable to what's called a DLL search order hijack, which basically just means that if you place a malicious DLL in the same directory where the Windows Defender executable is, then it's going to go ahead and load that DLL first, just because it sees it first, instead of actually going and loading the real DLL from wherever it's located on your system. Now, obviously, you already need to have access to the file system in order to take advantage of that kind of a vulnerability, but that can still help with certain things like bypassing user account control to escalate privileges, since the DLL is being loaded by a process that has escalated privileges, MS Defender in this case. You can also take advantage of this Defender vulnerability to help with persistence in your malware, because what's always going to load when you start up a Windows machine? MS Defender. So the malicious DLL is going to load as well. The malware would also enable network discovery on the system, the thing that lets different Windows machines talk to each other on a network. So obviously, that's so that it can spread to other Windows machines throughout the network. Now, you're probably wondering who is actually responsible for this cyber attack. It's hard to be 100% sure with any type of like remote cyber attack, but most of the sources are pointing towards it being the hacker group Revil that offers ransomware as a service. So this attack did use malware that goes under the same name as the hacking group. They also used a ransom note similar to Revil's. Let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, so this is basically the type of just generic, pay us Bitcoin, blah, 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 so that we can unlock your systems. And they even use the same onion domain. So this is the same one that Revil has been using for several years, where they're telling you to go to actually pay that Bitcoin. So you can see the same domain that's listed here in the screenshot. This malware also contained another function that's common with Revil, which is a whitelist function to basically spare users that are using a Russian keyboard layout. So they don't really want to hack Russians. I think that I don't know if they're necessarily trying to target US companies or US providers. I mean, obviously, when they targeted Kaseya, they affected international companies like Swedish supermarkets. But yeah, generally they don't want to affect Russian users with their malware. And again, that's a tactic that's used by Revil. So I think it's pretty safe to say that this is the same people that were also behind the JBS meatpacking attack. And that attack on JBS was pretty major, since that's the largest meat supplier in the world, and Revil was able to get them to pay $11 million to release the decryption key so that they could unlock their data. But this supply chain attack has affected so many different companies that Revil initially decided to handle things differently, and they were just sending ransoms to each of those individual companies. So the ransom pretty much depends on how big the company is, how many machines they have, and several other factors. They were asking for $45,000 to decrypt one machine, and then $5 million to decrypt an entire domain. But Revil is now offering a global decryption key to unlock the data for every single machine around the globe that was compromised by this attack for $70 million initially, but then that was later discounted to $50 million, which is still the largest ransom ever requested by a hacker group, which makes sense since this is also one of the biggest ransomware attacks that have ever been pulled off by a hacking group. But it's still unknown whether or not Revil has received the 50 million in Bitcoin. So ransomware attacks are only getting worse, and you're probably wondering at this point how you can try to secure yourself from it. The only way is to have good backups, but not only do you need to have good backups, you also need to have offline backups. So we saw with the remote drive wipes of, what was it, the Western Digital My Passport or something like that. Leaving your only backups online can be dangerous, not to mention that with these ransomware attacks, the hackers usually penetrate the systems weeks or months in advance to locking the files so that they can try to find all of the servers that are connected and compromise those too, as well as figure out how to shut down any type of antivirus systems that might try to stop the ransomware attack. But if you have an offsite backup or just a machine that's air-gapped away from your other devices, you can restore from the backup that is saved there and avoid paying the cost of a private jet to unlock your data.